Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. We've got a special gal who I heard her say that she's super tough. I was listening to some other podcasts with you out there, Lauren. This is Miss Lauren Murphy, UFC fighter. What are you doing today? Where are you at? Home?
Yeah, I'm at home. We're trying to finish up this big project that we have in our backyard. We built like a huge
Pergola?
patio addition. So we built a pergola. We've like redesigned our backyard. We poured like a concrete, well, we didn't pour a concrete patio. A crew came in and poured the concrete patio. And then we built a huge, like, it's like a 40-foot by 10-foot pergola over one side of the house, and then I think it's like an 11 by 12-foot pergola on the other side of the house. It's big.
I saw some of those pictures, you guys up on the hot summer roof putting brackets up.
Yeah, we chose August to do that. So
In Texas.
Yeah.
You got
Well,
it
we
done.
had to work around I have a competition schedule, and Joe just opened a gym. So we were trying to work like before the gym opened and while I didn't have any competitions coming up.
I met you about 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago down in Texas. You were at one of Brian McKenzie, one of his programs that he invited me to. I think they were calling it N=1.
Yeah.
We got to do some training together. I was quite impressed with your physical abilities. What makes a lady want to get punched in the face a bunch?
Um, I wouldn't say I wanted to. I wanted to know if I could handle it though. I wanted to know like if I was capable of being in a situation like that and being able to like handle it. So that's how I started fighting basically, is this I was just going to do one and see how it went, see how it felt, and see if I could do it. I just wanted to know what I was capable of.
What do you mean by handle it? Like, see if you like got scared or
Yeah, or if I would like I wanted to know if I would freeze up or if I would like react or if I could win, or like I'd never really been in a fight before I started fighting.
that's
And I
pretty
was pretty
normal.
Yeah, I was pretty afraid of like physical violence. I was afraid of it, which also is normal, but I hated that because it sometimes I would let people like bully me around or like kind of push me around, and I didn't have very much confidence. And so when I started jujitsu. There was an MMA team there, and I don't know, it just kind of sparked this idea in me, like, you know what, maybe I'll do one fight, see if I could do it, and like see how it goes, and it'll be a cool story to tell my grandkids someday.
You were up in Alaska, right? That's where you're from.
Yeah, I'm from Alaska. I was born and raised there.
So you started training up there. I think I read or heard something about your wanted to get your kid into martial arts, and then you ended up becoming a martial artist, and he
Yeah.
didn't enjoy it. Something like
No,
that,
he
right?
wasn't into it. He was like, they're all touching each other, like ugh, he didn't like it, but I loved it.
Where did you train up there? I was in Anchorage. I went up there in January, and I think it's called Anchorage BJJ. Maybe it's the most big
I've trained
gym.
there. Yeah, I started at a Gracie Baja up there. I don't think there is a Gracie Baja anymore. But when I started, there was a Gracie Baja up there, and ABJJ was like their biggest competitor, and they were kind of like, um, they were the only two schools really in Anchorage. But man, they had some good grapplers there. Anchorage actually has some really good grapplers, really good wrestlers come out of Alaska. There's some really good jujitsu players that have come out of Alaska. It's pretty interesting. So
That gym that I
ABJJ is
went
a
to
great
had
school, though.
500 members. I think he said.
At ABJJ, yeah, they're a
Yeah.
great school. They're phenomenal. They have a really
Yeah.
good MMA program. They have fantastic jujitsu program. The guy there, the head instructor is Ryder Spatafor, and like
I, I got to train with him a little bit when I was up there in January.
yeah, he's incredible. What were you doing in Anchorage in January?
Went to go ski. I went up to Alaskan.
Oh yeah, it's pretty out there. Yours was
I've never
cool,
been
huh?
to Alaska. The only states I hadn't been to were Alaska and Hawaii. So I've also only ever seen very meager northern lights down here in the lower 58. So I thought if I went in the winter time, I'd have a better chance with the long nights. But
Did
it's
you? Did you score? Did you get, oh, you didn't,
no,
they didn't
I
come
went
out
up there by myself. I rented a little Subaru and I drove all the way down to Homer and ate some good food and met some people who were driving their cars out on a lake and saw some moose. Skied a couple days in the rain up there at Alaskan. And then
quite.
when I was in Anchorage, I went and trained a little bit. Yeah, he's a cool dude. He's super fit. He was running people like old school karate programs through push-ups and
Mhm.
calisthenics and stuff before and after class. I like that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great coach. He helped me a lot with my jujitsu when I lived up there.
So you came down to the States, started a professional fighting career. You've been doing it like 10, 12 years?
About 12 now, yeah. Gosh, almost 15. Yeah.
Would you change it?
No, not for anything.
No.
No.
What are some things like about people see a fighter on TV or they meet somebody, like what are things that people don't know about that sport or about being a professional fighter? What are some things
Oh,
that
probably all
maybe
kinds of things.
yeah, like
You
what's
know.
some stuff?
Okay, so everybody's like, oh, like some people are really disgusted by it. They think it's like horrifying. Um, and so I try to explain to people that the way that they feel about fighting is how I feel about like working in an office. Like I just cannot do it. I would hate that.
I'd rather get punched in the face than sit in an office.
I truly would. Yeah. I mean, you might as well be just punching me in the face over and over again if you have to like have me sit somewhere 9 hours a day and not be my own boss and like working for somebody else, making somebody else money. That just drives me crazy. So I didn't really know that when I started. Fighting wasn't super lucrative, but I loved the freedom that it allowed me, and I loved the challenge of it. I just wanted to see like what I was capable of. And there's a lot of people out there, I think like most of the world doesn't they're not interested in finding out what they're capable of. They just want to do what they feel like they need to do to make some money and what people expect of them and
Status quo.
um huh.
Status quo.
Yeah, the status quo. So my family was kind of horrified by it at first. They were like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't a real job. You need to go get a real job. And like, they didn't understand why. Like, for Thanksgiving, I would be like training instead of like coming to family dinner, or I would be like resting because, I'd been training so hard and all that stuff kind of irritated them. But I just loved what I was doing. And I think like when somebody's a musician or like, I don't know, any other like profession where you can get really obsessed and really into it, people are a lot more accepting of it. But in fighting, it's a lot different. Like people just find it really like off-putting, or at least they used to, back like 10 years ago, people found it really off-putting, especially for females to fight. And it was just hard for me to explain to them that like I loved working out every day. I loved being on a team. I loved having a coach. I loved learning. There was so much to learn and to master. It's like you're never going to be able to master everything. And I really loved like chasing that mastery every day. I loved feeling like I was part of a community, and not just a community, but a community that you had to like earn your way into. Like not everybody gets to do what we do, and not everybody can handle what we do. And I loved that I got to be part of this like elite club that people wished they could be a part of, but they weren't for whatever reason they had. So it gave me a lot of pride. It gave me a lot of confidence in myself. It surrounded me with really good people, like some of the friends that I've made. Some of the friends that I made through fighting, like, have been my friends from the day I walked into the gym. These are going to be like lifelong friendships. But mostly it just made me want to be a better person, like physically, mentally, emotionally. And I've grown so much in my fight career, and I don't think I would have like found that kind of growth doing anything else.
That's cool. I don't
Mhm.
listen to a lot of podcasts, but if I interview somebody and I know you, I've only spent a couple days with you, so I don't know you well. So I listen to a few people. There are some annoying people that do interviews. I listened to one. What was the girl's name that you fought that the real high level female fighter and you had C diff while you were in the in the ring? What was her name?
Valentina Shevchenko.
Thank you. So you're being interviewed by some guy and he's asking you stuff and I'm laughing as I'm driving, listening. I'm like, what an idiot. Like he said, he could be your friend, so I apologize. But he said, like, could you even imagine yourself winning? And I'm like, why the hell would she be fighting if she couldn't imagine herself winning? And like, could you, like he said, do you allow yourself to even think about them putting the belt around you? I don't know if you remember the interview, but
I don't. No, I must have blocked
as
it
I
out.
listen to it. So how often does that kind of happen? Do you ever just want to tell these people shut the hell up?
Yeah, there's a lot of like media out there. They're just trying to get sound bites. They don't really care what you're even talking about. Like they're not invested in what you're actually saying. They're literally just looking for a headline. So it's like they're hearing what you're saying, but they don't give a shit. You know, they're only thinking of it in terms of like, how can I make money off of this? How can I get
Mm,
clicks off of this? How can I like frame this in a way that gets me the most attention, instead of thinking about it like, how can I get to know this person? How can we bring her out to the world? How can we introduce her to like our fans and followers? The media just doesn't think about things like that. They literally think like, how can I use this person to get what I want? And what they
mm.
want is clicks and views, and they want comments, and they want controversy, and they want things that are going to drum up all the, they want quotes that are going to drum up those things. And so that does get irritating. And especially to fight somebody like Valentina, who's like such an accomplished fighter and so dangerous and so well known and was such a dominant champion for so long. It was like hard to talk to people because they want you to have confidence in yourself, but then they laugh at you if you do. Like, you know what I mean? If you as a fighter talk about having like real feelings like nerves or fear or like a little bit of self-doubt, like they latch onto that like there's something wrong with you, and actually it makes you very normal. So it does get annoying to talk to the media. They're not there for you, that's for sure.
So like I listened to that. I think that interview was 3 days before the match. And I've never been on a stage where millions of people are watching and I could get physically hurt. And I'm like, man, I wouldn't like I've done plenty of things where I've had to prepare myself mentally and maybe have been around people or things that detracted from my ability to do that. I'm like, is that's part of your job though? You have to go sit and do this shit. So you're like probably got a battle in your head trying to keep your head square, and then you got dipshits saying
Yeah.
stupid stuff. Can you just shut off and not do that and just go to like a fight camp and show up in the ring, or do they expect you to do interviews and get out there?
They expect you to do interviews. It is an opportunity for fighters to put themselves out there in a way that they want to present themselves to the world. Um, and that's always kind of a good thing. Like you do want the fans to get invested in you as a professional athlete. You want the fans to get to know you, and you want them to feel some type of way about you. And some people really embrace like a heel type of role. Some people embrace like an underdog type of role. Some people will embrace like a really like alpha type of role, like super confidence.
Conor
And
McGregor.
yeah, Conor McGregor, Juliana Pena, Sean
Yeah.
O'Malley, like that's probably the number one like that you see out of fighters. There's also been some fighters out there that really embrace being the underdog and like embrace being kind of like the I don't know how to say, I don't want to say like the outcast, but just like somebody different. So there's a fight coming up this weekend between Chase Hooper and oh, I can't remember the guy's name. He's like the Monkey King. Um I even trained with him. He's a really nice guy, and he's like just really like effeminate, like feminine, and anyway, they're like two super unassuming dudes, where it's like, and they embrace that and they love it, and people follow them. Derek Lewis is another kind of outlier where he doesn't give a fuck about the media. He literally won't show up for interviews. He says the craziest shit, and people love him for it. Yeah, so I think there's all different kinds, and if you can be the type of person that can genuinely put yourself out there, I think people respond really well to that if you're just genuine and real. I don't know, that fight with Valentina was hard though. Like it was hard to do media for it. I just didn't really understand how much that gut infection was affecting me. I didn't understand what it was doing to me, like physically or mentally or emotionally. And now I know so much more about it. Now I'm like,
Yeah, you could
like
die
a
from
self,
that.
Huh?
You can die from that.
Yeah, it would have been good if somebody had told me that. Andy Galpin was in charge of my fight camp, and he knew all about it. Like, he knew that I had tested positive for that, and he was kind of like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Like, don't be a pussy. Just do your thing. We'll take care of this after the fight. Like, you're fine." And I was telling him about the symptoms I was having, and he was kind of like, "Nah, don't worry about it." And so I just really chalked it up to like, maybe I'm just a poor athlete, or maybe the stress is getting to me. For a world title fight, the stress is immense. The pressure is immense. And yeah, I just could not put it together that it was like this gut infection could be affecting me so much. I just didn't know. And obviously Dr. Galpin is one of the like best physiologists in the world. He's a high level performance coach. He's worked with many UFC fighters. And so I trusted him. Like, of course I trusted him. We'd worked together for years. We had done 5 fights before that. Like, he had guided me through 5 fucking UFC fights, and I'd won all of them. And so of course I trusted him. And so for him to basically treat me like I was being weak, while I had this like very debilitating gut infection. I mean, he treated me like I was just being a poor athlete instead of like somebody that was legitimately ill.
Are
And
you still using him? You still work with him?
fuck no.
Well, I'm
Hell
listening to
no.
you the way you're talking about it, and it
No,
sounded like he.
actually, like I filed a lawsuit against him. Like, that's insane. You can't do that to people. He's a professional. I'm a
Yeah.
professional. That's a situation where, like you said, I could have literally fucking died. And like, no, I didn't know that for months and months and months. And when I think about not only that, but how contagious the condition is, that's not acceptable.
When I heard you in that interview talking about it, and you said I didn't know how serious this was, I was like, come on, like how could she not know? And I thought like I didn't realize a doctor was talking to you. I thought you this was like jujitsu coach telling you like you'll be fine, but it was a medical doctor. So yeah, you'd believe him, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is like, he's Dr. Andy Galpin, right? And he's telling me like, oh, uh, medical practitioners, they can really screw up professional athletes. They don't know what they're doing with professional athletes. I know what I'm doing with professional athletes. And so that's the thing, is he's not a medical doctor. But I didn't really even understand that at the time. Like, I didn't understand there was a difference between like,
What kind of doctor is he?
yeah, he's a fucking PhD. He's a doctor of fucking human bioenergetics. So
Okay.
yeah, that sounds like a fucking pretty reliable doctor, doesn't it? You got a PhD in human bioenergetics. I mean, anyway, yeah, I didn't realize.
So you're not barred by the organization to not say bad things about him.
What organization?
I don't know. Does he work for the UFC?
Can I hope not? I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
so. I'm
I
pretty
thought
sure, but I think if the UFC really knew what had happened, I think they would be very, very concerned, you know?
you didn't tell anybody.
Well, he was telling me I was healthy. So what would I have told
Excuse
anybody?
me.
Like, you know,
Sorry about that.
I mean, after, like, okay, so we went through this fight, and then months later, I mean, I fought Valentina in September, and it was like December or January before I figured out like how bad C. diff is. I literally did not know what it was until like I was, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't know anything about it. And so when I found out how serious it was, that's when I talked to Dr. Galpin about it. And I was like, hey, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I had gone to the Performance Institute and told them that I was, battling C. diff. It was like recurring, and I was getting sick all the time. And so I had told them like, I have C. diff, and they kicked me out and they shut down the PI. And they were like, it's really contagious. And that's when I was like, excuse me? Like, what the fuck is going on here? And so anyway, that was when I started to figure it out, but it wasn't until months later. And so what could I like tell the UFC? The fight was over, and it had been over for months at that point.
I'm reading about him just so I understood. Professor of kinesiology.
Yeah, he teaches at what's
California
the
State University.
huh?
California State.
Yeah, Fullerton,
You
California
don't
State.
I don't want to get you into any kind of a legal thing, mother effing him on a published broadcast. So, uh, how, so after the fact, you look back at that, it probably makes you angry because I think the one thing I heard you say over and over is you would have tried to reschedule that fight when you were healthy, knowing looking back.
Oh yeah, of course. Like, I mean, especially it being contagious. That was the first thing that really got to me. It's like you can't put somebody with contagious shit into a fucking fight. Not like that. You know what I'm saying? And that was the first thing that got to me. And I thought for a long time, like, man, if I had just known what it was, like maybe I could have mentally overcome it. Like all fighters think like that. Like, oh, we can overcome anything. We have kind of a Superman complex, you know? And like I don't know. Now I think looking back, it's like, no, if we had known the truth, my team would have been like, hey, we're not fighting with this shit. Like this is, it's not gonna happen. Like my manager would never have let that fight happen if he had known, but none of us knew. Dr. Galpin's the only one that knew. So yeah, I mean, we do have teams around us, but like everybody's got their own job to do.
When do you like quit? How old do you think you'll be when you say no more fighting and then you just become a mentor and a teacher and a coach?
Very soon.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm 40 and man, the fighters are just getting younger and better. You know what I mean? So I definitely feel it in my body. I think I'm more athletic than 95% of 40-year-olds on the planet. Um, I
I
think I
know.
could,
I did some workouts with you. You're very athletic.
yeah, and I think that I could beat a good portion of the roster still, especially at flyweight. And what's that country song? He's like, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as
I'm
good
as
once
good
as I ever
once as I
was.
ever was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel, like on a good day, I feel like I'm still the baddest bitch ever. And I'm as tough as fuck. And I think I'm gonna be that way till I'm 90, but I'm definitely slowing down. I'm definitely like more sore, more injury prone, like my back hurts. You know what I'm saying? So the time is near. I still have a few fights left on my UFC contract. And I'm getting ready to do Worlds December 7th. So I'm gonna go win Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, IBJJF Worlds in Nogi, and then kind of just see where we're at after that. Right now I'm just taking it a couple weeks at a time, a little bit at a time, and see how I feel and see what I want to do. But we're pretty set up. I mean, a lot of fighters end up like retiring or not fighting, and they have to keep fighting to keep making money, and they have to keep fighting to like have something to live off of. And I just don't really feel that way. Like my husband and I are opening 2 gyms this year. I opened up a Deep End Fitness
What's that?
here in Houston. So yeah, that's 3 businesses we've got going on that we've opened up this year that I think are going to be like our next life path, and they're going to provide us with income and passion and people and community and all the things that we need. So
What is deep end fitness?
Deep End Fitness is it's like a functional fitness program that takes place in like deep water. So anywhere from like 9 to 15 feet of water. And we do a lot of stuff. We teach people water confidence. We're an anti-drowning program. So we teach people how to survive in the water. We teach people, we give them a workout as well. So that's where the fitness part comes in. And the workouts are really fun and different. It's a lot of like swimming on the surface, doing stuff under the water, getting out, doing some land exercises, getting back in the pool. And so your CO2 tolerance ends up getting very high. Your fitness and like cardio gets really high. And we get a lot of people into like from military candidates, and they want to go into special forces and they need help passing like the water portion of the tests for intake and stuff. And so we help them get through that. We get people that are afraid of the water, and so we teach them some water confidence skills. We take them like really slowly, teach them how to put their head under, teach them how to swim underwater. We teach lifeguards as well. We do a lot of lifeguard in-service days. So yeah, it's a
How
it's a
the heck did
very
you get into this?
program.
You're from a place where nobody swims. Like nobody swims in Alaska, and you're a fighter, not a swimmer. So how'd you
Yeah.
get into that?
Well, there's a lot of fighters involved in it. Dominic Cruz is a coach for Deep End Fitness. Liz Carmouche is a coach for Deep End
Is
Fitness.
it something that there's multiple locations, or is it okay?
Yeah, it started in San Diego, and that's where like Liz and Dom and Ali Malay McFarlane. She was a Bellator champion, longtime Bellator fighter. Um, And I would see all them on Instagram doing these workouts in the pool, and they were like carrying weights underwater and like doing
Okay.
these long breath holds. And their conditioning in their fights was always just top notch. Like they never gassed out. They always had a really good mindset. I think all three of them have been champions in one organization or another, you know. And I just thought it was so cool. I was like, man, I wish we had something like that here. And so after my last fight, I called the guys up and I was like, hey, what would it take to bring this program to Houston? And they were like, well, actually, we're expanding the program right now. If you'd like to license it in Houston, like you can get certified to be an instructor and open up one of your own. I was like, cool. So I started training, and I started training really hard. I mean, I could swim, I could do like basic strokes and stuff, and I've never been afraid of the water. So it took a couple months, but I got into the kind of shape that was necessary to pass the instructor course for them. And I partnered up with a guy out here named Diego Jaime, and we're just a really good team, man. We run a really good business. And so we started a Deep End Fitness out here. It's a couple months old, still in its infancy, but it's growing.
Do you have an indoor pool?
We do. Yeah, we use a natatorium here, but we have the option, like we could use an outdoor pool for the summer and then move to one indoor in the winter. There's a pool here in Houston too that I'd like to go look at that's heated year round. So it's privately owned and it's heated year round, and so possibly we could get into there. But yeah, it's a cool deal. I really like it. I've met a lot of different types of athletes, not just fighters. We do get fighters in our program, but we also get, like I said, like military hopefuls. We get a lot of triathletes. We get a lot of water polo players. We get a lot of like former swimmers that swam in college or swam throughout high school and are just kind of looking for like a different way to be in the pool. So I've gotten to branch out and meet a lot of first responders as well. So it's been awesome. I get to meet a whole new group of people doing this.
You guys have two gyms, same affiliation for both of them, just like in different parts of town.
Yeah, they'll both be Henzo Gracie's. We opened one up in Pearland, which is in South Houston. And then we're going to open up another one in Missouri City. It's like a mile from, not even, I think it's about a mile from our house. Like I could jog there every day if I wanted to. So,
You're going to be
um,
teaching?
Oh yeah, I love to teach actually, and I really like teaching women. I love it when women come into the gym and they just start growing. Like some of them are afraid of physical contact, some of them have like abusive histories, some of them are just naturally very unconfident or a little timid. And then they start practicing jujitsu, and you kind of see this light come on where they start like looking the world in the eye, and they like hold their head up and their shoulders back a little bit more. I just absolutely fucking love that.
That's cool. There's a really robust program at our gym. Katie Hart leads it, and a gal named Kasha. They're badasses. They've got a nice group of women that come in there. I think they do a couple days a week, but they're tough ladies. A lot
Yeah.
of how would you describe your jujitsu?
My jujitsu, it's very position oriented. It's really useful for MMA. So for me, it's all about like, it's really good for self-defense, I guess is another way to say it. So it's all about like getting on top, um, having good hips, being able to get somebody off of the top of you. You know what I mean? If somebody's on top of you, being able to get out from underneath them. And yeah, I think it's really useful for women. It's basic too. I don't do anything complicated. Like you'll never see me doing these crazy guards or like
You're not
inverting.
spinning on your head and shit.
Yeah, no spinning on my head, rolling through. I don't do very many leg locks, but I've been training with John Danaher lately, which has been amazing. He's widely considered to be the best jujitsu coach in the world.
Never
And
heard of it.
he's awesome. He's amazing. And
When I
his
talked to
team
you
is
last,
amazing.
you had said that you were down there training.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
in
it's
Texas
cool.
the same time you were down there, like right around Halloween, I believe.
Oh yeah, you should have rolled through.
Yeah, we were too busy holding the raft down in the river with beers. And we were in and out super fast. When you do like at the IBJJF tournament, you're gonna jump in. Do you have to catch yourself? Do you like feel like about to make a fist and cave somebody's temple in, and then stop yourself? Like I'm not allowed to here.
I personally don't know. But sometimes those girls try to get a little rough with me, and I always just like laugh in my head, like, bitch, you don't even know.
They try to get rough with you in the jujitsu matches.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially at the higher levels. They'll just do stuff like snap your head down super hard. They'll like cross face under your nose really hard. They'll dig their elbows into your neck or into your face or something, just little stuff to make you really uncomfortable and make you move and hopefully make a mistake. And it just always makes me laugh because I'm like, first of all, I'm a tank. You can't hurt me. And then secondly, like you just have no idea who you're fucking with. Like I can make a jiu-jitsu match pretty close to a fight. It's not a fight, but I can make it pretty dang close.
It's an interesting thing. I hear some people say it is a fight, and I hear other people go into these long rants about it's not a fucking fight.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I try not to call it, I try to call them matches. I try not to call them fights because a fight is a fight and a jujitsu match is a match.
Now wait a
But
second. A fight is a fight, but I mean a fight is two human beings trying to like best each other and hurt each other. I don't know. My coach Dan Hart, he'll come across with a cross face that's pretty much a blow as arms are coming in and
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty close to a
squeezing
fight.
squeezing jawbones and things like that.
Yeah, but in a jujitsu match, if you slap somebody too hard, if you palm their forehead too hard, they'll disqualify you.
Okay.
You get DQ'd. The ref stands up, he goes like this, and he raises your opponent's hand. So I'm trying to think if that's ever happened to me. I don't think I've gotten DQ'd for being too rough, but I've seen it happen a lot of times.
And I wasn't saying my coach is too rough, but aggressive and
Yeah,
some things.
there's definitely ways around it. There's definitely girls that really push the line, and guys too. There's people that really push the line.
Because you're a fighter, it's okay to ask you how much do you weigh
Right now, I weigh like
when you're
100.
fighting,
Oh, when I'm fighting?
or yeah, just like what's your average, what's your like your fighting weight?
Yeah, so I weigh in at 125. That's the weight that I weigh in at. When I walk into the ring, I'm usually about like 137 or so. I usually gain about 12 pounds. And then when I'm outside of camp, like right now, I'm like 150 to 155. Right now, I'm like 155 is pretty heavy for me.
And you're pretty muscular, so how often do you train with like a dude, and the dude doesn't realize
How
like
strong I am.
yeah how strong and
Yeah.
what's your does that happen much?
Yeah. I get a lot of people that are like, one guy told me this last year and he had me dying. He was just cracking me up because he was like, we rolled for a round, like a 5-minute round. And he kind of sat back at the end of it. And he was like, I know you probably hear this all the time, but you are incredibly strong. I was like, yeah, you're right. I do get that all the time. What ends up happening a lot is I'll roll with a guy and like not only am I strong, but my jujitsu is good. And so nobody likes to lose, but especially no man wants to lose to a female. It just is the way it is. It's always been that way since I started training. I think it's always going to be that way. And so they start ramping it up. And I used to complain to my husband about it. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Like all these dudes just like see me and they think it's okay to go hard as fuck. And he's like, no, Lauren, they feel how strong you are and they think you're going like 1,000%. He was like, they don't realize that you're just strong. And so they start ramping it up because they think you're going 1,000%. So then they start trying to go 1,000%.
They've
And
got to
that's
rely on horsepower to try to try to
he's
do
like,
something.
that's when things get out of hand. So now actually sometimes I'll tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm really strong. Like, just so you know, before we get into this, I'm really strong. Like, and so they're like, okay. So anyway, it's like it's okay. I'm kind of used to it now, and it's made my technique better. But it's like pound for pound. If I'm training with a guy, almost always they're going to be stronger than me and more powerful than me and more explosive than me, and like, um,
Nature.
huh?
Nature, our muscles are
Yeah,
bigger, our hearts are bigger, our lungs are bigger, our bones are thicker. Yeah.
yeah. Everything. Hands are bigger. Like all of it. Everything. So, I don't. It's like I just try to do my best, and depending on the guy that I'm rolling with, if they're really experienced, usually they're experienced enough to tone it down. And if they're not so experienced, then we're having a scrap, you know?
And maybe you accidentally slap somebody.
You know,
I
or maybe, you know, just for that 5 or 6 minutes that we're rolling, I will go like 1,000% and see what I could do as if it were actually like a fight, you know? But if it's somebody that's really experienced and they're going lightly with me, then that's the time that I get to just work on my technique and like think about what I'm doing, you know? So I try to match their speed really. And sometimes I win and sometimes I lose.
Once upon a time, you were going to be a nurse, I think I read or heard.
Yeah, about a million fucking years ago. Yeah, it wasn't for me. I didn't love it.
I know quite a few nurses. Katie, my coach's wife that I mentioned, she's a nurse, but that whole grind of, and so is Kasha actually too. That whole grind of like working night shifts and things like that. That
Yeah.
I wouldn't take that
Yeah.
up. What
I went to
attracted that?
nursing.
What
Huh?
attracted you to it? What attracted you to it? And then you backed away from it.
Yeah, well, I had this idea that I was going to be a nurse and I was going to help people, and I was super into travel nursing. I really wanted to travel a bunch and like get paid for it. And I was pretty good in school. I was really good at like taking tests, and I was good at yeah, I was a pretty good test taker, really, like just good at memorizing information and kind of regurgitating it back to people. I like to read. I had some really good professors in A&P, like basic anatomy and physiology classes that I really liked. And so I thought that that was kind of my thing. And I do still really like A&P, like at a really basic level. But um, we got into nursing school and I was like, this wasn't really what I expected. Like nurses are kind of assholes and like the professors were kind of assholes. And we started doing our clinicals and I just hated it. It wasn't what I thought. Like what I experienced was that like the patients were um this is going to sound really like duh, but it was like the patients were so sick and they were so unhappy and they didn't want your help. Like they weren't glad to see their nurses, their families were not happy to see you, the doctors didn't like treat us well, like, and it could have just been maybe a hazing period, the nursing students, but I just didn't stick around to find out. Back then I was like had just started my fight career and I was loving it. And I was drinking a lot. I had a pretty big problem with alcohol and just kind of going through it in my home life, like you do, in your 20s. I was like married to a guy that I wasn't crazy about. And yeah, so one day on my birthday, I went out and I got super drunk and I drove my car. I was actually trying to drive my car home so that I could be home in time to go to clinicals the next day. And I got pulled over and I went to jail for DUI. And I wasn't able to go to my clinical. And if you no call, no show a clinical in that program, they dismiss you from the program. And so um, I was in jail. I couldn't call. I couldn't get anywhere. Obviously, I went to jail for a couple days. And by the time I got out of jail, I'd been dismissed from the program, and I was eligible to like reapply to get back in like the next semester or whatever. And I just was like, I don't want to. I don't love it the way that I thought that I would. Um, I focused on just like working. I had a bunch of debt to the state. When you go to jail, you rack up a ton of debt, like in court fees and jail fees and all kinds of stuff, impound fees for my car and getting my license back. It just took a long time to like overcome that huge like mistake I had made. And yeah, I ended up working on a fire crew. I went to work on a fire crew and that was really, really difficult. It was super challenging, but I made a bunch of money doing that. And by the time I got off the fire crew, Joe, who I had like divorced my husband and I had met Joe and I was dating Joe, and he was transferred down to Florida with the Air Force. And so by the time I got off the fire crew, I was like, hey, like, I want to come with you. And so I'd made enough money to pay off my debt and get out of there.
Why are you drinking so much?
Because I'm an alcoholic. I don't know. That was the end of it, though. I stopped drinking that year, and I haven't had a drink since 2000, let's see, 2011. So
Okay.
was that been like 12 years? Yeah. So I've always been like that though. Like anything I do, I'm gonna do it till the fucking wheels come off, you know? So like drinking, I think, is one of those things. Like ever since I started drinking when I was a teenager, and I was a blackout drinker from like the very beginning. Like I just that's just how I roll, I guess. And so
What
um
turned you on to drinking?
just being a kid and like drinking with your friends and stuff. But I just was never, I was always out of control with it from the
Hmm.
beginning to the end. You know, there was never a point where I drank like a normal person ever.
So you don't have a glass of wine with dinner or anything like that? Right.
Never. I haven't touched alcohol in, yeah, like what is that?
12
2009,
years.
20, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
2009. Okay.
Or no, I'm
14,
sorry, 2000, what did I say? So like I think New
11,
Year's Day 2012. Yeah. So I
12.
drank during 2011 and I was sober for all of 2012. And 2013 is when my fight
So
career really
12,
took off.
13 years. You used to
Yeah.
smoke too.
Yeah, I smoked Marlboro Reds, baby, pack a day.
I smoked cigarettes when I was younger. It's just as a somebody that's an elite athlete, you usually don't see that.
No, I wasn't an elite athlete when I was smoking and drinking. I didn't grow up playing any sports or anything like that. I walked into a jujitsu gym when I was like 26, and that was my first experience like really playing a sport.
Were you then, when you walked in the gym, then were you still partying?
Oh yeah, I would go to the gym drunk. I would like roll with people when I was drunk. My first couple fights, I was still drinking, so like I remember I would make myself quit drinking like 4 weeks before the fight. And I just knew that like I had to, you know. I was so afraid of losing, I would like make myself stop drinking. But then after the fight, I would drink all the time, morning, noon, and night, you know. And then I got the DUI and I went to jail, but I also went to prison. So in Alaska, they took me to jail and I didn't have any bail money to get out, and I pled not guilty, like just to try to get out of the DUI. And so they were like, "Well, if you don't have any like bail money or whatever, if you can't make bail, we're going to take you up to the prison." And so they took me up to the women's prison for a few days, and that really was terrifying. Is like on my way up to the prison, I was in a van full of like I was in a van full of criminals, and I didn't see myself like that. I mean, there I was with them, but I just didn't see myself like that. And there was like, you know, there were like violent offenders in there were prostitutes in there was like drunks like me, there were women that had like hurt their kids, there were women that had like, you know, committed like arson and felonies and shit like
Crazy,
that. And
crazy stuff.
yeah, and it just kind I was like, holy shit. And I remember being very scared. I didn't want anybody to know that I was a fighter because I didn't want to get into a fight in fucking prison. Everybody there was like very, very tough, very, very fucking mean. None of them had any shits to give, you know. They put me in a cell with a girl. You have no choice who your cellmate is. You know what I'm saying? And so it was like I could have been bunked up with anybody, and just none of that. I had never experienced anything like that before. And luckily, the girl that I shared a cell with was we got along, and she was pretty cool. I can't remember her name, but I remember she had like one lazy eye, and she kind of showed me the ropes. She like, you know, looked out for me. There was like there's rules in there that like you don't know about until you fucking break them, or unless somebody tells you about them. All the COs have different rules. Every different CO has different shit that they get mad about, and different rules for the inmates, and just fucking anything could have happened, you know. It could have been anything. And I just remember being like, fuck, this is scary. Like I didn't want to live like that. um yeah, yeah.
Not worth it.
I didn't think so. Yeah, that was a scary few days. I don't remember, I was only in there for like 3 days, maybe 2 or 3 days. But yeah, I think 3 days. But like it was that was enough, you know. And the jail wasn't any fun either. I was only in jail for about a day, but the prison was fucking scary. So
Is your family still in Alaska?
yeah, my mom and my sister live up there. My brother lives in Colorado, and I live in Texas.
What what they think about all that?
Oh, about me going to prison?
Yeah. The story's getting better. Now you're like a convict.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't even, honestly, the charges with the DUI never even went through. Just the state really didn't have a case, and they dropped it, but I still had a ton of like fees to pay and stuff. My mom's husband is actually a prison guard up at that prison, and like he sees that they call them like DUI divas, you know, like chicks that get DUIs and they bounce in for a few days and they bounce out. Either they post bail or their family comes and gets them or whatever. So yeah, they weren't pumped about it. They weren't happy. Um, Everybody knew I needed to get sober. You know what I mean? Like everybody knew that. My sister was kind of disgusted with me. My mom was afraid for me. Um,
Did you do
Nobody
some
was
kind of
happy.
treatment program, or did you just tough it out?
No, no, I've done treatment programs. So I've been to a bunch of treatment programs actually, like when I was a kid, when I was younger. And I kind of have my own opinion about treatment programs. Like they're good for some people, they're not good for others. I think for me they weren't good at the time because it's like I saw this comedian talking about rehab the other day, and she was like, I fucking love rehab. I would go all the time if I could. She was like, you know, like you get a nice bed that they fucking cook all your meals for you. You get snack time. Sometimes you get to like ride ponies. You can do arts and crafts. Like, you know, like you go on these outings and all this kind of shit. And I just started laughing because I was like, it's true. It's so true. If you want to bounce out of jail, like, people use treatment to get out of jail sometimes, and they're just there for like the experience of it, you know. They're not actually trying to get better. And it turns out too, I don't know if people really know this, but it's like if you're going to try to get drugs, if you're trying to get drugs from somebody, the very best place to look for drugs is with a drug addict. And the very best place to find a drug addict is in a drug treatment center. You know, so everybody there, like, just it can be a really unhealthy place. And if you're not in a great mindset going in, if you're not really there to get better 100%, if you're not totally invested in like finding a new way of life, it's really, really easy to, you know, slip through the cracks. There's a lot of cracks in places like that, and it's easy to fall into them. So, for me, the best luck that I ever had was using a 12-step program. I actually really love the 12 steps, and like I think they're super applicable to life. And I love the people that I've met in 12-step programs, and I think it's much more easy to apply to life, you know, on a daily basis if you're willing to. So, and it's free. It's fucking free, you know, like there's no like they don't have an incentive to get you better like rehab centers do. So,
Sure.
anyway, 12-step program is what I found that worked the best for me.
Are you a religious person?
I'm not.
12
No.
steps is kind of rooted in Christianity, if memory serves.
Yeah, I mean they talk about having a higher power, and I believe in something. Like I believe that like there's something in the universe that's greater than me. And so that for me that's all it really took. Like they say God. They don't really talk, there's no talk of like Jesus Christ or anything like that. It's not really Christian. More just that you have to find like a power greater than yourself, preferably not another person, you know.
They usually let you down. One of the things when I was listening to you talking, you talked a bunch about confidence, about having to develop and work on confidence. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's probably, if I could think of one thing in my career that held me back the most, it would be that. It would be a lack of confidence and having like imposter syndrome, you know, like that feeling like, oh, I don't belong here. I'm not good enough to be here. How did I get here? You know, all these people are better than me. Like all those kinds of thoughts, I think, are actually pretty normal. But I just didn't realize for a long time that like we're in control of our own mindset, you know, like my attitude is my choice. I was like a full on fucking adult before I realized that. Like I was like in my late 30s when I realized that, you know, that my attitude is
That's
my
like a couple months ago, kid.
choice. Right, exactly.
Well, I know people in their 70s that don't realize that. So I don't think that
Yeah.
that's not just special to you.
No. And Yeah, it took me, I mean, there's like, there's a line. I think that especially as athletes, we have to figure out where the line is between like confidence and arrogance, and the line between like humility and low self-worth, And
Mm.
it can be difficult to sort those things out. And I have had a really awesome sports psychologist in my career that's helped me a lot to like kind of figure out where to draw the line and how to reframe some of the thoughts that I have so that it serves me better.
Can you
You know,
share their name?
yeah, his name's Dr. Jim Afremow. He wrote a book called The Champion's Mind, and he actually has a whole series, like The Champion's Comeback, The Champion's Mind. I think I have a couple of them. They might be in my room on
That's
on
okay
my
if you
bed.
don't have him, but we got his name. We can look him up.
Yeah, he's the man. He's awesome.
What put you down the path to start looking at this? So, I mean, if you're in your late 30s, you said, or let's just say even 30s, you've been fighting, you've been having some success. Did you see like a hole and you didn't know what the heck to plug it with? Or you're like, what's the missing link here? I'm training, I got good jujitsu, I can punch good, got good endurance. How did that come about that you
Yeah, I was I won my first 8 fights, and I was like champion of 2 different organizations, and uh, I went to the UFC and I lost my first 2 fights in the UFC. And usually, if you lose your first 2 fights, they'll just cut you. They're not like super interested. Usually, if you lose it back in the day, it was like if you lost twice in a row, that was kind of it. And so, I lost my first 2 fights, and the first fight was a really close loss, but it was a really weird loss. It was like just kind of a weird fight, very bizarre. And like I wouldn't say it's super exciting. I fought Sarah McMahon, who's like an Olympic wrestler, and it was a weird fight. And then my second fight, I was just freaking out. Like in the back, I was really freaking out. Before we walked out, I was like crying, and then I was really excited, and I was just having like big feelings, and I had no idea where it was coming from or how to
Hmm.
control it. I had no idea. And my coaches were in the back, and they were like, "What the fuck is happening?" And I've kind of felt the same way. I didn't even understand how to channel any of that. But I was nervous, and I didn't know how to channel that. I was kind of excited. I was scared. I was really disappointed in my like last fight that was so close, but still a loss. I was in the gym. I was losing a lot of rounds in the gym, and so my confidence was kind of in the trash. And I just didn't know what was normal to feel and what wasn't. I didn't know if this made me a good fighter or a bad fighter or a normal person or like a non-athlete or what it meant about me. And so I ended up walking out. I fought Liz Carmouche, and it was a really boring fight. Like for some reason, I just couldn't make myself pull the trigger. I wasn't getting in there and mixing it up with her. I didn't know what to do. I was like frozen, and that had never really happened to me before. And so after that fight, I was so disappointed and so ashamed of myself. Um, one of my friends was like, "I think you need to talk to a sports psychologist," and I was like, "You know what? I think you're right." And so I called this guy that was in Arizona. I just looked up like sports psychologist near me, and it happened to be Jim Afremow. This was like before he got pretty famous, I guess, in the world of sports psychology. And so I left a message with him, and he called me back, and he said, "Well, I looked you up and I looked up your record." And he was like, "I would love to meet up if you have time." And so I did. And he gave me a lot of tools to use, like things that I could physically do, not just like a way to think. He didn't just sit down and have a conversation. He'd be like, "Okay, get out a pen and paper and let's write about this." Or like, "Here, I want you to say these specific things at this specific time. And before you get on the mat, I want you to do this with your body and breathe in a certain way." It was like physical actions I could take that gave me something to focus on. And so I've actually been seeing him ever since. So I've been
That's
seeing
cool.
Dr. Ackermau for almost 10 years. And he's just given me so many tools throughout the years and really changed my attitude. One of the most valuable tools he's given me is this. And it's I have a little notebook that I carry around throughout my whole fight camp. And any day that I'm feeling very confident or very proud of myself, or just like having a good day mentally, I'll write down some like really good positive thoughts about, how strong I am, or like great things that I've accomplished or good things that occurred during the camp. And on days when I'm feeling very nervous or like down on myself and I'm having a lot of doubts, I'll pull out the notebook and I'll read it. And then I'll add some stuff to it. But it's only like good, positive things about what I want to do with my game plan or what kind of great fighter I am, things that make me feel good. And so I'll build this notebook up into the fight, and I take it with me into fight week, and I'll just read it like 3 or 4 times a day during fight week, on the way to the arena especially, and then in the locker room in the back before we start warming up. I'll just have this notebook of like positive affirmations about me, stuff that I believe, stuff that I wrote in there that I know is true about me. And it usually just pumps up my confidence and helps me relax a little bit so that I can go out and just like be myself and like have a great performance.
I like
And
that.
it's been a really, really, it's been one of the most useful tools that he's like given to me. I love it.
How'd you connect to Brian McKenzie and his group? I was just with Rob the other day. He was teaching at my event, by the way. Big
Oh,
Rob.
really? How did I connect with Brian? I think through, uh, I think Andy had mentioned him at some point, but I didn't really understand the like extent that they worked together. And I knew that Brian did breath work. I knew that he was like a breath work guy, and that was a thing that I was getting really interested in. Sean O'Malley was practicing it in Phoenix and stuff. He has a different guy, but he was practicing breath work. And Tim Welch was a coach of mine for a while, and they were just super into it. And I was like, man, there's something to this. And so I was working really hard. I was in the UFC, and I think I was getting ready to fight. Like it was before I fought Valentina, and so I was asking Andy about. I was asking Dr. Galpin about breath work, and he was like, "Well, you could call Brian, but Brian's really expensive." He was like, "Let me just help you with it," and so he did, and he gave me some stuff to do. But I always kind of wondered, like, what's the expert think, you know? And so after I fought Valentina, Brian was doing a seminar in Texas, like an N=1 seminar, and I'd heard of like his company, like Shift Adapt, and whatever else he was running. You know what I mean? He's run a couple different companies, I guess. And so, yeah, I signed up and I paid the fee and went to N=1, went out and fed the buffaloes and,
I
jumped in the
know I was
pool,
there. I remember.
did all the shit. So,
Yeah, that was a cool property. I didn't know. Did you continue to train with him at all after that?
yeah. So when I fought Misha Tate, I worked with Brian quite a bit on like CO2 tolerance and altitude training. And that was awesome. I had a great performance when I fought Misha. I was in great shape. I wasn't working with Dr. Galpin anymore. I moved on to a new nutritionist that helped me overcome C. diff, and she works with Brian. And so I had a great performance. But then, like, I found out Brian still works with Dr. Galpin a lot, and for me, it was just kind of a no-go. I was like, I can't work with somebody that works with Andy, and like, I can't. And anyway, we parted ways, and that was unfortunate. But I literally cannot work with somebody that works with Dr. Galpin. So that's it. And the next fight that I had, I did not do any CO2 tolerance training or any altitude training, anything like that. And I had a terrible performance. And that's when I realized, I was like, man, there's really something to this, like to the CO2 tolerance training and to breath work and stuff. And so that's when I called Deep End Fitness, because I knew they practiced that kind of stuff. And they really center it towards athletes, like it's, anyway, they're a sidestep from what Brian does, but it was in the same realm. And so that's been super useful to me. Like I've been doing that program. Obviously, I'm an instructor for that program, and that has helped increase my CO2 tolerance quite a bit and helped me practice like some of the things that I got to practice with Brian. And so I feel like I've done some jujitsu comps since then, and my performance is back. Like I feel better
Cool.
now.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
What are some things that people don't know about you that you'd like people to know about? Besides that you do roofing in August.
one of the things I think I'm the most proud of is that I worked on a fire crew for a season. I was a wildland firefighter for a season. I'm really proud of that. There's
Where were
guys
you
out
guys
there,
working?
Alaska.
Okay.
So, well, we did mostly Alaska, but then we did roles in California, Idaho, Nevada,
All in that
and
same season.
Yeah, so we
So they
worked in
just
Alaska at
they
the
take you and
beginning.
they just move you wherever there's a fire.
Yeah, wherever crews need help. So if there's a big fire somewhere and the crews need help, then they would fly us down there, and it was
How
pretty
much
cool,
how
man.
much training do you get before you're out there fighting fires?
Not a lot for a type 2 crew. For the crew I was on, it's like the entry level crew, you know, so they'll take anybody. It's like not it's a step below hot shots and shit like that. Like the hot shots are the guys out there like fighting the fire, and smoke jumpers and guys like that are much more high level. I was on what's called a type 2 crew, where they take entry level guys, they train us for a couple weeks, like running hoses and shit like that. But mostly it's a lot of walking with heavy shit, and you go and put out embers. And we did a little bit of firefighting that was really exciting. I loved that part of it. But more than anything, we were like doing fire prevention. So we were like digging trenches, we were digging embers.
Cutting breaks
Um,
for the to stop the fire from having fuel. That's some
yeah,
hard work. That probably helped build you to be the fighter.
yeah, it was the
Rocky
hardest
Balboa
thing I've ever
style.
done. It was really fucking hard. And we like slept under the stars, like we are just camping out in the
Bunch
middle
of
of
dirty
nowhere.
ass hippies.
Dude, it was crazy. And the state would fly in, like, so we eat MREs all the time. We'd pack our own MREs, and that was kind of our meal for several days. But if you got caught out in the wilderness for like longer than 3 days, the state would helicopter in these food boxes, and they would drop big boxes of food to you that had like tons of candy and steaks and like all this like fresh food. But they would often move you on the third day so that they didn't have to fly food into they'd move you to a new location. But it was really hard. I got blistered up on my feet, blistered up on my hands, I got sunburned, I was cold, I was hot, I was cold again, got eaten alive by bugs. But it's like it's one of those things where like I'm proud that I did it. It was a
That's
very hard
cool.
thing to do, and I'm
That's
so
cool.
proud that I did it. Like a lot of people wouldn't have made it, and a lot of people didn't make it. A lot of people on that crew quit before the season was over. I learned how to use a chainsaw. I got to run a chainsaw on a lot of places, man. And so that was cool, just hauling heavy shit everywhere, and it's pretty exciting. There was a couple times that summer where I literally thought I might die. And that's a crazy thing to go through, to think that like you might actually be at the end, you might not see your family again, and
Just
to
being too close to
legitimately
the
think
fire.
that. One time I remember specifically, we were on a fucking bus on the side of a mountain, and the road that we were on was like this. It was like this wide. It was like just wide enough for the fucking bus. And you could look out the side of the window and not even see the road. All you could see was straight down into the ravine. And I just remember thinking, like, if one wheel goes off this bus, or like if one thing happens, if a rock falls, or like if a tree falls, like that's it. And
So
so I just slunk down in my seat, and I literally like wrote a letter to my family about like if I don't get to see you again, here's all the things I want you guys to know. There was another time when you're walking through like burned out places that have already been burned by the fire, and you walk in a long line. If there's 20 of us, we all walk like arm's length to arm's length with each other, just looking for shit that might still be burning and putting it out. So not necessarily big flames, but like smoking embers or smoke spots or hot spots that like we can dig up and mix with mud to make sure it doesn't reignite. But you're walking amongst all these dead trees, and they're called widow makers because at any time they can be burning from the inside and fall over, and
crush you.
yeah, if they fucking land on you, that's it. And so there was a couple times where trees fell pretty close to us, and we'd have to like run for cover and just hope it doesn't fucking land on you. And like it was wild, but it was awesome. We see bears and shit out there sometimes, like all kinds of stuff.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's
It
intense.
it was crazy. And that was on like the entry level crew. Do you know what I mean? Like being a hot shot or a smoke jumper or something like that is like probably a whole other world. Those guys are facing it much more often. So, but I have a big soft spot in my heart now for wildland firefighters. Um, yeah, big soft spot for them.
Do you get paid okay?
Oh yeah, that was the whole reason I did it, is because I was like, I needed to. I was broke. I was in debt to the state, and I needed to make some money. And so I did that, and it also kept me really busy. It kept me sober, it kept me busy. gave me something to focus on. I was gone the whole summer basically, leaving for just weeks at a time, and we'd come back for a day or two and then leave for weeks at a time again.
How do people in Houston find you to train?
They can come to Renzo Gracie. Renzo Gracie Pearland is open, and it's open in South Houston in Pearland. So I'm there all the time. Joe's there 3 times a day, and that's where I'm at.
Let's talk about your husband a little bit so people know who this guy is that is running the gym with you. He's an Air Force veteran that recently retired.
He's still in the reserves. So
Okay.
He's still doing his 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, but he just made chief, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's been a black belt for like 5 or 6 years now. He's an amazing coach, amazing instructor. He's cornered a couple different title fights in the UFC. He's cornered some of the biggest names in the UFC. He's trained with some of the biggest names in the UFC. He's done some fights himself. So he's 3-1 as a professional fighter, but it's been about 10 years since he's fought. So I don't think he'll fight again. But yeah, he's just an incredible athlete, incredible human. Anything he does, he's taken it to the max. So yeah, he's amazing, and he's handsome too. So
the rank that he just achieved is a pretty high rank for the enlisted, right? I remember reading when you shared about that.
Yeah, it's like by congressional decree, only 1% of the Air Force at any given time can be the rank of chief. And so he is literally the 1% in the Air Force right now.
That's cool. What was his job? What was his job?
He works on the fighter jets. So he does maintenance on the fighter jets. Now he just tells people what to do, but back in the day, he would do maintenance on the fighter jets.
Put some lube on that. Tighten that.
Yeah.
That's funny. I look forward to coming and checking that gym out. I really would be interested in coming and doing your pool party.
Please do. Please do.
That'd be awesome. I'm very interested in that stuff. I can swim okay, but that underwater business is another animal altogether.
It really is. Yeah, we get a lot of like good swimmers that are good surface swimmers. They've swam in college, swam in high school. They can race across the surface, but when they get under the water, that's a problem for them. And then we get people that have no problem being under the water. That's Joe. Joe can sink all day long. He has no problem being under the water, but staying at the surface is hard for him, and it causes panic.
You're saying like treading water with his head in the air, or
that and just like freestyle, just swimming on the surface exhausts him. But swimming under the water is no problem for him. He's so dense, like he's very lean and very dense. And so it's no problem for him to hold his breath and sink. That doesn't freak him out at all. But trying to stay afloat where he can breathe consistently, that's very hard for him.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's got a superpower in the pool, and everybody's got a weakness too. And so, yeah, it's really a cool program because it can help you like identify that weakness and then face it over and over again. Facing that panic over and over again is so good for us to learn how to deal with it and think our way through it, and like just being able to recognize the kind of self-talk that you're having in moments of panic is huge. Most people can't do it unless they practice it extensively.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit. How do you recognize the self-talk? This is something that I read on, write on, teach on constantly. How do you listen to that voice and change the narrative? Where are you taking this?
It takes practice. I have to go get a phone charger. Are you plugged in, babe? Okay, I'm going to steal this. He's the man himself.
Hey, Joe.
What's up, Mickey?
How are you, sir?
We're talking about you. Oh, pretty good. Yeah. So recognizing like that self-talk and kind of like reframing the narrative, it just takes practice. It's not something that you can just be like, oh, I'll do it when I need to. Like that's a recipe for failure. It's definitely about giving yourself levels of stress that you can handle, and then practicing talking yourself through it. So if you stress somebody out too much and you put them in like fight or flight mode and give them no tools to handle it, then you're not doing them any favors. It's kind of like lifting weights, right? If you give somebody weights that are too heavy and you tell them to just lift it without giving them any technique or like seeing where they're at first, then they're probably going to lift it wrong. They're probably going to hurt themselves. They're not going to get any stronger, and they're going to fucking hate weightlifting, you know? But if you give them weights that are manageable, challenging, but manageable, you give them some technique to lift it with, and you give them a program that scales it and brings them along at a pace that's manageable, then they're going to get stronger, right? They lift the weights, they put the weights down, they go home, they rest, they eat, they sleep, they come back, they lift the weights again, and then eventually the weights get heavier and heavier. And so that's the same with like any kind of mental training, is it has to be taken in steps, and it has to be manageable, and you have to give somebody techniques to manage it, right? So those techniques can come from another person, it can come from reading, you can hear it on a podcast, it can be breath work, it can be self-talk, it can be like a physical practice, like tapping, or some people tap like this, or they'll tap on their chest, or they'll tap on their forehead. These are all just techniques that can help somebody focus and find their focus and give them a second to slow down.
We just had a guy at our S12 event. I'm not interrupting, other than he was doing this after a really intensive run. And I'm like, are you fucking having a heart attack? Like, are you like, I went up to him. I'm like, hey man, you okay? He's like, I'm fine. I'm like, why are you pounding on your chest? And he was trying to explain to me, because I'd never seen anybody do what he was doing. And that's what he was trying to do, was like center himself. But I thought he was like, my chest.
Yeah.
My chest.
Good idea. Bad timing. Yeah. Actually, I saw Rose Namajunas do it when she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk. You know, she walked out, and it's like the UFC championship. So it's all the bells and whistles and lights and shit like that, and the immense pressure and the nerves. And she walked out and she was saying, I'm the best. And when she stood in the octagon across from Whaley and they were introducing her, she was tapping on her chest, and I think on her stomach too. And then they say, like, there's like a rhythm to it, like your forehead, I think your chin, your chest, your stomach. I can't remember. I don't practice tapping, but like it's one method that you can use to focus in. There's, so many.
I like it. I usually end these discussions with this, and thank you so much for spending the time with us. If the people that are watching, listening, if they never meet you, never come to your gym, never cross your path physically, what would you leave them with?
Man, you can't change the world other than by changing yourself. That's like all I ever think. Consistency is key. So like consistency over time equals results, and you can't change the world other than by changing yourself.
I like that. Appreciate that. I got nothing to add to that. It's good to catch up. I'm in Texas a couple times a year. I'm definitely going to come check out your place when I'm there.
Let's go shooting too. But yeah, I would love to go shooting. I just bought a 6 hour. Well, not just, I bought it months ago, but proud owner of a 6 hour P365. Yeah, yep, that's the one. And so anyway, I've been shooting, I don't know, once or twice a month now. Not a sharp shot, but I would love to practice. So if you come to our pool party, no. I don't think you need a license to carry in Texas, do you? Anybody can take a gun anywhere?
I'm not going to give you legal advice over a podcast. You can very easily find that out. You're in Harris County?
Yeah.
Did you vote for sheriff?
No, actually, I think I'm in Fort Bend.
Okay. My friend just ran for sheriff, is running for sheriff there. Anyway, I will respond to you offline about that. Yeah, I'd love to take you shooting. We should do that. I appreciate you guys that listened and viewed. I hope you learned something. There's a bunch of good information here that she shared with us. And as always, don't be dickheads. Be well. Mickey with CarryTrainer.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com. Oh, that's so nice and toasty. Chilly winter day. Hey, want to make sure that you guys know that this episode of the Higher Line podcast has been brought to you by Ignis Lux Coffee. Ignis Lux, Latin for firelight. A reminder to let your fire burn bright. We are only here but for a little while, and there's no sense in drinking crummy coffee when there's coffee like this available. Small batch roasted in fluid bed roasters. Check that out. Less than 1% of all the coffee in the world is done in fluid bed roasters. Why? Because it's more work, but it gives you a much better product. IgnisLuxCoffee.com. Roasted fresh, sent right to your door. Check it out.